Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I wanted to give some of my thoughts on the Division 2's fourth year of post-launch content. We are officially in the final days of it, as Year 5 has been confirmed to be beginning this next week on Thursday, June 8th. And so, because this only happens once a year, and because Year 4 in particular has been significant for more reason than one, I thought it would be fun to just sit down and chat about it. What content did we get? How was it received? What does it mean for the game moving forward? That's kind of what I want to try and tackle, so let's get into it. And as always, but particularly on a video like this, please do leave any and all of your thoughts on this discussion down below, your reaction to my interpretation of things, your own thoughts on Year 4, whatever it may be. The only thing I ask, as always, is to keep things respectful and civil so that we can focus on having a great and productive discussion. Alright, well, where I want to begin is with a bit of context on this, and that is to talk about the real-world circumstances that this year of content was made under. I'm sure most of you know the story by now, but if you don't, or you need a refresher, this is very crucial to setting the stage for my own thoughts on things, but I'll try and be brief. Back in late 2020, early 2021, the end of the Division 2 second year of content was wrapping up with Season 4, and most people, myself included, were anticipating and expecting to get an announcement for a Division 3 in March. That had been the trend between the Division 1 and 2, and key figures and developers had been exiting the project for the past several months leading up to that point, which did nothing but fuel the speculation mill for a Division 3. Well, it came as quite a shock to us all when Ubisoft announced that in January of 2021, surprise, Massive Entertainment, who makes the Division, is now working on a huge AAA Star Wars game. This was in addition to the Avatar project that was already in development, and combined with the fact that many previous Division devs announced that they were now on this new project, it was pretty crushing to us Division fans. And it left the future of the game and the franchise in a very questionable place. But it seemed almost by miracle that Ubisoft announced, hang on, we're not done yet, and that the Division 2 would be receiving new content, its production led by a few veterans at Massive, and the bulk of the workforce coming from a newly assembled team at Ubisoft Bucharest. Now, this is notable for a couple of reasons. For one, scale. The game had over 1,000 developers leading up to its launch and during Year 1 while Warlords of New York was being built, compared to now there were 5 to 6 people at Massive, it was reported, and 30 to 35 at Bucharest. That is a stark night and day difference. And on top of that, none of these developers at Bucharest had any experience or knowledge about working on the Division, nor had they ever developed in Snowdrop the engine that the game is built upon. And so you now had eager fans wanting new content and a team that had no idea how to make that new content. And so they had to learn, while also, I should mention, having to contest with an entire game's worth of old code, made by different people, using different methods, some with notes attached explaining how and why it was built the way that it was, and some not. And so now it was this team's job to try and figure that all out and deliver new content at the level of quality that the fans expected. It took quite a while, but they did. Roughly 15 months after the announcement of continued development on the game, Title Update 15 and Season 9 kicked off Year 4 of the Division 2 in May of 2022. In retrospect, this was the largest and I would argue most popular update in Year 4. It brought the Countdown game mode, the expertise progression system, and the first iteration of what is now recognized as a renewed effort by the development team to put greater emphasis and importance and presentation on the story content of the game, delivered through the seasonal structure. Skipping a bit ahead, we then add Season 10 later in 2022. This brought 2 new legendary difficulty missions to the game with Manning National Zoo and Tidal Basin, as well as a host of quality of life updates. And finally, we had Season 11 earlier this year, which, while intended to originally deliver another new game mode, brought no new real gameplay content to dive into, but it did deliver another season of story content and further iterations and changes to the game. And of course, all 3 of these major updates had apparel, gameplay, and other events happening throughout them. Now, speaking purely about the quality of the content we received, not factoring in the technical performance, bugs, any of it, comparing Year 4 to Year 2, the last year of content that we got, I think they're really pretty equal. In Year 2, we got the Summit. In Year 4, we got Countdown. I think Countdown is far superior, but of course that will be preferential. In Year 2, we got the first 3 legendary missions in the game with TU8, and I think the Season 10 legendaries are just as good, if not slightly more memorable. Year 2 had fantastic new items like the Memento, the Scorpio, Hunter's Fury, and Year 4 did as well, like the Catharsis, the Ninja Bike, Heartbreaker. They also each had less good items, the Imperial Dynasty, the Sacrum Imperium. My point is, pound for pound, the content that we got was solid, and with the additions of things like a more cohesive and compelling story and the new ideas we saw the devs reaching for, Year 4's content itself was a win. I think. The big difference was the technical state of that content, and I don't think anybody would try and argue that it was good or even acceptable for a game like The Division. I mean, think back to Season 9's countdown crashes, the expertise level resets, items getting their stats swapped or removed, the build generation system breakdown, the visual bugs, and the delays that we saw on almost every event and update throughout the year. None of that is good, fun, or as I said before, acceptable. And compare that back to year 2, sure there were bugs, but every game has bugs. Live games, story games, mobile games, anyone who tries to say otherwise is pretty ignorant. However, the volume and frequency of those bugs back then was much lesser, and the delays were less present, if they were even present at all. From what I can recall, every season began 3 months after the last one started, like clockwork. So that is definitely where year 4 faltered for the majority of people. Where I think you will see opinions differ, however, is the consensus on whose fault that is. Many will say it is the dev teams, I mean they are the people working on the game, but, and the reason I gave all of that context earlier into the state of the development team is that I think it is quite unfair to pin it all on them, and that is because the task they were given by corporate was to deliver a year of content for the game at the same scale of years past, with the clear limitations and disadvantages they were at, namely the team size reduction, their total inexperience with this game and engine, all of it. So yes, it sucked to go through, and we are still experiencing these bugs and delays, but I think to solely blame that on the devs and not simultaneously recognize the absolute behemoth of a task they were given is disingenuous. And at the end of the day, like I said before, despite these developers not knowing a thing about Snowdrop just 2 years ago, they still delivered a new game mode that in my opinion is far better than Summit. They delivered legendary missions that were just as challenging and thrilling as the original ones, and they delivered story content that was, I think most of us would agree, more compelling than seasons 1 to 4. So to sum it all up, there were big wins in year 4 and big losses with the technical reliability of the game. I did want to speak about one other thing, however, and that is to recognize and comment on the significance of year 4 overall, because, and I mentioned this in videos before, year 4 proved that this game could survive a 15-month content drought. Think about that. We went 15 months without a drop of new content to play or any major updates to dive into, and that was already at the tail end of Season 4, which itself brought no big new content to the game. That is the definition of any live game's worst nightmare, and so any time throughout Year 4 I saw people saying, that's it, game's dead, Year 4 proved that this game literally cannot die, because if 15 months of no new content wasn't going to do it, nothing will. So not only was Year 4 the literal rebirth of the game, but what we've seen is actually a comeback that I don't know if even the developers expected. Not 2 to 3 weeks into Year 4 kicking off with Season 9, Year 5 content was announced. The update had already done so well and brought enough people back that we went from this clip,
supporter in the game.
And bring your friends, because the more people play the update and the more it's going to look good to our bosses, and they're going to say, yeah, you can keep making content for the game.
Yeah, what he said, so yeah, that's, I'm in.
To an entire additional year of content being greenlit. And even once Year 4 began to taper off in new offerings, Season 10 didn't bring a huge amount of new content and Season 11 brought none, we continued to hear from the developers about how new players continued to check out the game, even at increasing rates as the months went on. And I know some people will be like, can't trust what the devs are saying. Well then don't. How about the fact that I made a new player guide for the game back in February, right around when the smallest update the game had had since 2020 released with Season 11, and yet just 4 months later, that video is now my third most popular video of all time, with nearly 160,000 views. And looking at the analytics, the views are increasing as time goes on to an average of 4,000 new views per day now as we approach Year 5. My point is this, Year 4 was not perfect in any way, and if the only place you go to gauge community sentiment is Twitter or Reddit, chances are you're going to assume the game is doing horribly, because it's filled with people who are chronically online. I'm sorry, I love you all, but you are. And the majority of them have played this franchise since 2016 and seen much higher highs than anything we saw this year. But if you take a moment and look beyond those echo chambers, to many surprise, the game is actually doing really well, and I think that's due in part to the fact that despite Year 4's immense technical hiccups, the content it delivered was quite solid, and people recognize the fantastic foundation that the game has. And I bring all of this up because yes, we are now heading into Year 5, and this is truly the moment where this new development team has their chance to shine. Year 4 was their trial run, they now have better grasps on the game, the engine, how to make new content and experiences in it, and that's not to say that everything in Year 5 will be perfect, because it won't be. But we're already seeing them striving to achieve bigger goals, like with the new DLC and complete endgame revamp in Season 4, and that's really the sticking point for everything here, I believe. I think and hope that Descent in Season 1 will be awesome. From comments from the devs themselves and things I've heard, the incursion in Season 2 is phenomenal. Season 3 seems to have some really great story lined up. The old and new player bases are here. They're in the game right now, and if Year 5 can continue to satisfy them enough in these first 3 updates, then Season 4 and this new DLC has the opportunity to do for the game and the franchise what I believe Warlords of New York did, which was propel the game into the spotlight of the gaming industry, show everybody just how fantastic the world of The Division can be, and leave them wanting wanting more. Ubisoft's greatest mistake was completely neglecting that momentum that Warlords gave the game back in year 2. They downscaled the team's size and resources throughout that year as people were sent over to Star Wars, leading to a declining amount of content and quality. We saw Codename Nightmare be cancelled in Season 4 and Phase Manhunt feeling incomplete. I mean, I can only imagine where the game would be right now had they capitalized on Warlord's success and kept things rolling from there with more resources, more content. Instead, they let it go, and here we are over 3 years later where we're just finally beginning to pick up some steam again. And I think we can now see that Ubisoft is going to have that chance once again with Season 4 and this DLC. New and old players alike responded to Year 4. A lot of hours were played. And we've all stated pretty clearly that we're in support of Year 5's plans and direction. So if they stick the landing with this year of content and Season 4 specifically, then I think that is truly this game's second chance at greatness. And it gives Ubisoft their redeeming moment to correct their mistake and use the momentum that DLC and update will hopefully gain to propel the franchise into a continually growing and evolving experience in 2024 and beyond. Looking back on Year 4, my consensus is that for the circumstances we had of this entirely new development team, the content we had was fantastic for being their first go at things. The technical side of the game suffered a lot, and that has burned a lot of people, understandably, but clearly many are willing to look past it, as we've seen droves of new players checking out the game. So I hope this dev team is in it to win it this year. I think they've learned some lessons. Clearly they're very scrappy and adaptable with all of the fires we've seen them put out along the way, and I hope that they're ready to work and work hard, because that's what it's going to take. You would have hoped by now that Ubisoft would see the absolute goldmine they're sitting on with The Division. It seems like they're maybe starting to, but the promise of Year 5's content is huge, and the promise of what kinds of support and plans The Division 2 could receive if Year 5 goes well, that's even greater. So I'm rooting for them. I enjoyed Year 4 despite its shortcomings, and I can't wait to see what's in store. Those are some of my thoughts on Year 4 and the general outlook for the game heading into Year 5. Everybody, I very much hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please consider hitting that like button. It would be very appreciated. And be sure to click that subscribe button as well and turn on the notification bell so that you can stay up to date with the game throughout Year 5, as we know there are big things on the way, and you can bet that I will be here covering it all. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, your take on Year 4 content, its quality, the technical side of things. How do you see it all progressing into Year 5? And do you see this upcoming DLC as that second chance, as I kind of laid out? Whatever you're thinking, I'm eager to hear it, so get to typing. If you want to stay connected with me and get all of the latest official updates, be sure to check out the Twitter and Discord links in the description as well. And that's going to do it for me today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.